Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. I'm here with a kind-hearted woman named Amy. You may have heard before. She's been in and around my programs for a very long time. How are you, Amy?
I'm fine. How are you, Glenn?
I'm fine. Looking forward to this discussion. Amy agreed to share this discussion with you so that you could benefit from her experience and strength and hope and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Right, Amy?
Yes.
Okay. So what's up? What do you want to talk about today?
I wanted to talk about something, and I have some maybe answers, but maybe you'll have some answers. I want to know what took me so long to finally get it. As you said, I've been around a long time, and I can tell you like some of the steps along the way that I hit, some of the insights I've had, some of the tricks and tips that I learned, but I don't really understand what took me so long.
Okay. Give me a little bit more context and tell me your best guess, and then I'll tell you my best guess.
Okay. Well, so for the present context, and this may not sound like much to some of your really successful people, but I've followed my rules without breaking them for 9 days in a row with no breaks.
Terrific.
Which is a record for me. The progression, when I first started, however many long years that was, 3 years ago maybe, without realizing it, I thought the program was about weight loss. So all my first rules were about how to stick to a diet. Even though my very first rule was I will never again eat chocolate. I eventually developed that into a conditional that said, until and unless I've reached my goal weight or my birthday, whichever comes first. So it was still this idea that I don't want to give up chocolate, it's just that I realize that's keeping weight on me, and so I'm not going to eat any until I lose all the weight, and then I'll go back to eating chocolate. Because I wasn't eating chocolate, my pig said, oh, well, you can have any other dessert you want. So I discovered all kinds of non-chocolate desserts, and that got a lot of hands. So then I went to, I will only have desserts once a week, and then it was twice a week, and then it was 3 times a week, and then it was, I'll only eat sugar if it's a dessert that's on my list of worth it desserts. And I had a list of, well, I still have a list somewhere, like 15 desserts that were really good. Anything else I would turn down. But that had the same kind of diety mindset to it, because it was like, these desserts I can only have once I've lost the weight, these I can have now, etc. So anyway, to skip over a bunch of food rule changes, I realized that my big binge behavior was eating after dinner. And at first I dealt with it by trying to switch up the food. So instead of binging on M&M peanuts after dinner, I switched to cherries. I could go through 3 to 5 pounds of cherries. So it's better than M&M peanuts, but it was still not getting me where I want to go. It was not till, I think, last summer that I finally realized I had to have a rule that said, I will never again eat after dinner or after 7 p.m., whichever goes first. You know, and the pig kind of confused me a bit about how exactly to put that rule in place. And I have a pretty complicated version of it now, but it works. Anyway, so I stopped eating after dinner. And then, I think I talked to you about this on another podcast, I discovered this other program that made me realize I was feeling deprived because I still thought I was dieting. So I started telling myself every day, I can eat anything and everything I want, except after dinner. And then the pig told me, well, you could eat as much as you like, have huge meals, and that'll make it even easier to not eat after dinner. So I kept gaining weight. So that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I got control of that by journaling the food and figuring out which things were putting the weight on. But now this time, it wasn't because I wanted to be on a diet, but because I wanted to stop overeating, which may sound similar, but it's really different.
Very different.
So I think that was probably the biggest change in a way.
That you let go of the diet mentality?
That I realized that I wasn't heavy because I wasn't dieting, but that I was heavy because I was overeating, and I just needed to stop overeating.
The best diet is staying on your food plan and just not overeating.
Really, yeah. Sounds kind of obvious, but I hadn't really thought of it that way before. I discovered other foods that were making me hungry all the time, so I started cutting those out. And then I learned something, maybe this is obvious to other people. You have to eat enough calories, not including the binging. I thought you just included binging in with your daily calories. I thought that was just the normal way to eat.
No, you need to eat enough calories of real food to satisfy your body's authentic need for nutrition. Otherwise, it generates stronger cravings.
Right, I didn't get that. Now I got that.
So what are the set of rules that you have that you've kept for the last 9 days and feel so proud of?
Oh, yeah, and the other thing was eating breakfast. That's another thing I changed. And I don't know which one of these, but, I used to have just coffee with cream. And now I have, well, not huge, but an actual breakfast. I went back to my childhood breakfast.
What was it?
Toast with butter.
Okay.
So my current food rules, I think that's what you asked?
We just wanted to get a sense of what was working for you.
Oh, okay, so there's 4 rules. Let's see if I can remember them under pressure. I will never eat more than 3 times a day, except on work days, and never after 8 p.m. unless I run after work. The second rule, I will never again eat M&M peanuts, cashews, chocolate chip cookies, or a drink with more than 1 teaspoon of sugar in it. Rule number 3, I will never again drink alcohol in a restaurant. And rule number 4, I will never again eat more than 1 sweet treat or 1 slice of pizza at work.
Okay, I see. Why do you think this final iteration is, not this is where you're going to wind up forever, but why do you think this is working better for you than so many other things have worked?
Well, the alcohol one, I've been up and down with that one. First it was the problem of I liked the sugary cocktails. So then I said, well, I'll just have wine. And then I realized that no matter what I drank at dinner, it made me want to eat more or have dessert or to break my rules after dinner. So then I said, well, I'm a small person. I'll just have half a glass of wine. And I stuck to that for a few weeks. But it's really hard to just have half a glass of wine, unless you bring a measuring cup with you. So I ended up saying, all right, forget it. I'll just ditch the alcohol altogether for restaurants. So then I thought I was going to do 3 meals a day, but the pig started messing around with, well, what is a meal? And you had a snack in the grocery store. Does that count? And so I changed that to just, I eat 3 times a day. But because I was going to allow myself to have a snack or a treat at work, then I didn't put a limit on how many times I would eat if I'm at work. And then the timing, sometimes I get home late for work and I put in an hour run before dinner. And if I do that, I'm allowed to eat after 8. So that one motivated me to get more exercise and at the same time still stick to my no eating after dinner rule. And then I picked these foods that I put on the never list that were foods that they're good, but they're not that good. And they're what I think of as, you probably have another name for these, but feed-forward foods. The more you eat, the more you want to eat. And maybe they're not that good in the first place.
Understood. Yes. Perfect.
And then, of course, along the way, I had all kinds of squeals that I refuted one by one. And many of the squeals led me to a new food rule. So like I had this thing where if they served pizza in the break room, I would try to eat as much of it as I could because I thought, oh, I'm in this horrible work environment. They don't appreciate me. I deserve to eat as much of this as I can. I refuted that one. Yeah, and I've got a bunch of reminders that I keep. I have like 12 different reminders or mantras, I guess, that came out of many of these refutations. And I rotate them. I put them on my calendar, and I read them every day at lunch. I rotate through the 12 different ones. When I come up with a new one that is better, I retire one and put the new one in.
When you were at your worst, How bad was it? How uncomfortable were you? What pain were you feeling? It wasn't tremendous, was it?
It wasn't a lot of pain. I mean, I didn't even know that I was a binge eater. And I heard someone else say this. I thought I was a recreational eater. I eat for fun. I thought, well, gee, wouldn't it be great to have an evening on the couch with a novel and M&M peanuts? I didn't see anything wrong with that. But I was, for years, 20 or more pounds overweight, which is, like 3 dress sizes on my size. I'm under 5 feet.
I didn't know you were under 5 feet.
I'm actually now under 4'11", unfortunately, but which is still under 5 feet. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly how tall that is because my ex-mother-in-law was exactly that tall. So I
Oh,
understand.
okay.
20 pounds could feel like a lot. Why do you think it took you so long to put this together?
Well, maybe that question you just asked me, maybe I wasn't in as much pain. I was never morbidly obese. My BMI was always close to the normal range, although not normal. I once went to someone else's program. They had like a weekend retreat, where all the fat people went to learn the techniques in person. And when I got there, all these people kept coming up to me, congratulating me on my weight loss. They'd never met me before. They said, "Oh, you've done so well."
That's funny.
I felt like imposter syndrome in the opposite way.
Yeah. But was the food obsession very bad? Were you bothered by thinking about food all the time and feeling like you shouldn't be?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, actually, and I think I talked about this a little bit on a call a little while ago, I didn't realize that I was food obsessed because I did think about it all the time, but I thought that was normal. Let's say I went to a concert. Sometimes I couldn't even stay through the whole concert because I'd be thinking about what will I have after the concert? Oh, yeah, there's that special caramel popcorn that I can only get at that certain market and they close at 9. Oh, if I leave at intermission, I can get there in time to get that. And so I would leave. I thought about it all the time. Whatever meal I was eating, I'd think about what was the next one or what restaurant am I going to go to. I'd read the menus. What am I going to order? What's for dinner tonight? Oh, yeah. And the other thing I did, and this is maybe it's part of the nighttime eating, when I did try to lose weight, I know nighttime eaters do this. I've heard you say that. I would try to bank my calories for dinner because, like, dinner was the reward meal of the day.
My guess from what you're describing is that you have what's kind of in the range of acceptable hedonism. You weren't suffering that much, even though it was 3 dress sizes. It sounds like you didn't have any serious medical problems. You weren't in that much pain about it, and you really, really enjoyed the food. Doesn't sound like you were having 20,000 calorie binges or anything like that, and the food obsession wasn't bothering you that much, even though you did have it. So you didn't really have pain as a motivator. What you needed to come to make it work was to, and please feel free to push back on any of this because I'm not declaring this is how it is. It's just my best guess from what you're describing. You had to come to terms with the things you could really never eat. And in the absence of the pain, it's kind of hard to do that because things really taste good. You had to come to terms with the alcohol. You had to come to terms with finding another way to feel some sense of dopaminergic pleasure when you're at work, when you didn't feel appreciated and you don't like it there. And you had to come to terms with limiting the volume in some way. So it was really quite a feat of things that you had to come to terms with and figure out what was better about doing this in the absence of having the pain that motivates most people, at least most people that come our way. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense.
Yeah. And Amy, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you have the balance of your life to enjoy the insights that you've developed and the new way of eating that you've developed. And, you can continue to improve it slowly. Are you still holding the 20 pounds? Are you still upset about that?
No, I've got only, let me see, I've got to figure it out. I've got 6 to 12 pounds left to go.
Amy, I don't see any reason you have to bother yourself too much about this. I think you got where you needed to be. You're not someone that suffered horrendously with guilt about eating right. Am I right? You don't really feel guilty when you make a mistake. You don't feel that, you don't
That's
suffer that
true.
much.
Right.
Yeah. So you're not tortured by guilt. You're not tortured by pain. You've lived a reasonable life with food, but you made it a lot better and you'll continue to make it better. So I don't think you have to bother yourself too much. I think you just need to do what you're doing.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not at my thinnest point that I was when I was in my dieting phase of the predecessor to Defeat Your Cravings, but I feel a lot more confident that I will get there and without dieting, which is the great thing.
It's an easier way to be with food in life. And unless and until some doctor says you have an emergency, if everything's looking okay, then why not be easier with food? Within these boundaries that work for you, why not be easier? That's what I think.
Okay.
You're hoping for a different answer?
Well, the grand insight, the next step. So actually, I have a good question for you.
What's that?
I heard someone on a podcast say, and I haven't figured this out yet, but I thought it was really neat. She said, what if we could turn that destructive force that is the pig, once we've got it caged, into some kind of positive energy? What would that be? And what could we do with it?
Mm-hmm. And what were your thoughts?
I don't have an answer to it yet, but I think it's an intriguing question.
Well, if you don't put it into another addiction, it naturally directs itself towards whatever is most meaningful to you in your life. It's really your life energy gone wrong. It's your life energy misdirected. And if you no longer misdirect it, then the world is your oyster. You have the opportunity to. I put a lot of it into my work. I put it into yoga. I put it into my family, kind of taking care of my nephew. I put it into a lot of things like that because that's what's most meaningful to me. Some people put it into their music or their kids or their pets or, we live with this force for creation. There's this kind of libidinous force inside of us that really wants to contribute to the world and make a difference and connect to other people. When you get the destructive food patterns out of the way, that really takes over, is my experience. After a period of boredom, after a period of feeling like this can't be all there is to life and letting the pig bother you and make you miserable about how boring and unstimulating it is without all the hyper-palatable concentrated foods. But after that, you start to find this project or this person or that person, and you become a different person. It's really quite miraculous. That's been my experience anyway.
And do you think it's, I forget what the word is, splitting hairs, whatever. Is it really pig energy or is it something else?
Well, the pig is your survival drive when it's directed towards breaking the rules that you want to keep to. Period, end of story. That's what the pig is. So when you no longer direct your survival drive towards things that are not good for you, then it's free to do anything else. It's no longer the pig, it's just your survival drive. Thank goodness we have reptilian brains that get us to eat and connect with other people and reproduce and defend our territory and work and make sure that we survive. Thank goodness we have that. I don't think it is the pig once the pig's out of the way.
Okay. I'm going to come up with a new name for it, whatever it is.
The metaphor, I thought about this for years. It's easiest to teach when you talk about it as the reptilian brain because people kind of understand, there's this thing inside me, there's this organ inside me that pushes my rational brain out of the way and makes me want to do things that I don't really want to do, that are against my best interest. But really, the reptilian brain is a wonderful part of us. It's the reptilian brain misdirected by the modern food industry, by hyperpalatable foods, and by cognitions, thoughts that justify misdirecting that energy. But the energy itself is actually very constructive. That's a more contextual, complex explanation that's harder to get people going with. So we just talk about the reptilian brain when we start.
I think that woman who spoke about that was kind of onto that idea about the positive energy. So, yeah.
Good. Is there anything else you wanted to talk to me about today?
I think I covered everything.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.